I just want to pull out another question here. How can I encourage my loved one to write a pad without seeming controlling or overstepping boundaries? I think this is a great example of where caregivers can get stuck sometimes in not knowing what their role is and not knowing how to navigate that relationship and wanting to stay away from taking over, but saying, we can't go through this again. This was a horrible experience of what just happened, or even I heard about this thing and I think it could be helpful. So maybe what are some talking points? What are some conversation starters that people can use in discussing a psychiatric advance directive with a loved one?
Well, Valerie, I'd love to jump in here with what I love about psychiatric advance directives and conversations around it is that any barriers that come up that people might place, or if providers present for barriers, well, what if and what this, any of the things that come up when thinking about this, for me, immediately points to an opportunity. Oh, that's the opportunity that we need to focus on here, right? If it, as we just discussed, is it, well, there's no supporters that the person could have as an agent. Oh, that's the opportunity. That perhaps is the path to rehabilitation, recovery, and support. Is let's work on that, right? So I think particularly when it comes to the questions that arise with psychiatric advance directives, it immediately points us to what's needed, and sometimes what's needed in the relationship, right? And so it's a great opportunity, right, to point out, oh, well, this is a boundary issue about their life and my life, and how do we have that conversation about my needs and their needs, and how those needs are intertwined with each other, I think that's, the question is my loved one. And I think when I think about my daughter, and I think about my partner, and I think about my best friend, they're all loved ones, but the context of those relationships are really important in terms of how I would go about this. I think, the first thing is just really when's the right opportunity to broach the subject, right? I think, again, broaching the subject from the vantage point of mutuality is always helpful. And that's where I would strongly encourage all of us to think about, are all of our healthcare decisions, including psychiatric. I think if we're starting from a place that psychiatric and mental health treatment questions aren't relevant to us, we're starting off in the wrong place. Mental health is a spectrum, and at any point in time, we may find ourselves intersecting with a medical system that is going to propose psychiatric treatment in response, perhaps, to situational stress or other factors. This is a growing concern. I experienced this with a loved one where we went into the emergency room. We weren't sure what was going on. Thankfully, I have the experience and background I have, because the line of questioning was leading my loved one towards anti-anxiety medications, when in actuality, they were having a stroke. So I see the opportunity for any of us to be presented with, questions, perhaps at a time when we're not in the best to make the decision. So, I think having the conversation from a vantage point of what are some treatments and preferences that we would all want or not want in these situations can be a great starting point. But also, I don't know the situation here, but I know I can imagine in a situation of my own where, I've gone through with a loved one multiple hospitalizations and situations where, the conversation can start with, as we've gone through these situations, things have happened that you clearly did not like and did not want. I have been taking notes on these things so that if we find ourselves in that situation again, I can be a better supporter to you. Would you like to take a look at some of what I've been learning? And I think that's the important place to start with before we get into let's make this a legal document that'll be an advance directive, and to really start from a place of, wanting to support that person to have increased voice and choice. If we start from a place of our preferences for that person in that situation may not be the best conversation starter.
I love you and I want to help you. So I need to know what you want. And I want to hear your voice even when you cannot use your voice. So please help me help you.
That was masterful. Hopefully everybody was listening to that. Amy, anything to add to bringing up this conversation and respecting boundaries with your loved one, or maybe something that you've heard or seen that would be helpful to others?
Yeah, I think this is a really great question, and I think something that a lot of family members, those of us supporting others, like deal with sometimes. I really love what Matthew said about how do we create more mutuality, and that this is the kind of thing that isn't just for that loved one. It really could be for us too. So I think approaching it of, hey, might you want to try something with me, and it not being solely about that loved one that we're trying to support, but being about us too. And I think that creates that environment of mutuality. I would also say, I try to be very conscientious about how I say things. And I don't know if anybody's ever kind of heard this saying of like, don't should on me, where like those shoulds come out. You should do this, you should do that. That never works for me. If somebody's coming at me with that kind of thing, it's an immediate, I don't want anything to do with what you're telling me I should or should not do. But if you present something with, hey, I learned about this thing, it might be something that you'd be interested in learning about. And then like tying in Natalie's masterful words, this is about keeping, our wishes at the forefront. Your wishes at the forefront kind of thing. You said that way better than I could, Natalie, but that's what comes to mind. And then also, I think this idea of just being able to acknowledge and honor the resistance of our loved ones. Resistance is something that can be like thrown out there as this like negative thing, but really it's something that many of us have recognized or have learned is like, that's our strength, is being able, and where our power is being able to say, yes, I'll do this, or no, I won't do that. And I think that being open to the resistance that our loved ones may come with is okay. They are allowed to have that. And it's seeing that as a positive thing. And at the same time, making sure that there's resources and available for when maybe we want to let some of that resistance down a little bit, that we can learn on our own. I just worked on a really great document. The Copeland Center Youth Move National did it, and it was around psychiatric advance directives for youth and young adults. An incredibly resistant, sometimes proudly resistant age group. And, this is all about just these first things that maybe we want to think about. This idea that like, yes, there's voice and choice in these things, and really trying to come from that like mutual perspective of how these things support us. And sometimes providing documents like that or information like that is also a lot more understandable and readable than like, oh, here's this like lengthy jargon legal form to fill out. That's one of the reasons why it took me a very long time to complete a PAD, because these lengthy legal forms, and I think is also one of the reasons to the prior question around what are some of the like hesitations of the system and providers doing more of this. There's not that much knowledge out there beyond these forms and documentation. And sometimes when we don't know things, we do nothing because we don't know how to speak to it. So the more information and resources that can be provided to our loved ones, I think is also something that could be beneficial.